as loud. We're actually going to give it a couple minutes. We found out that the Zoom link was wrong, so we're going to give about 3 to 4-ish minutes here to give people some time to be able to join the meeting, and then we'll get started. Thank you. Tonight on February 27th, here to talk about the approach at Kenmore. For those of you who might be joining us online, if you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A and not in the comment section. So we're really excited here to get started. Just for some quick introductions, my name is E. I am the president of Imagine Housing.
I'm Troy Draws. I'm the Vice President of Real Estate Development for Imagine Housing.
John Gilliland, Chief Impact Officer for Habitat for Humanity.
Tammy Cork, I'm the Housing and Human Services Manager for the City of Kenmore.
Debbie Bent, Community Development Director for the City of Kenmore.
And we're going to start with the City of Kenmore, talking a bit about the history of the site and kind of to level set a bit of where are we talking about.
Great, thank you. So we're here tonight to talk about an exciting new proposed development just a few doors down at a city-owned parcel here in the City of Kenmore. And I want to talk a little bit about how we got here. So the City Council at Kenmore has had a vision about affordable housing for many years. Beginning in 2021, affordable housing has been its #1 or #2 priority every year. So it was the #1 priority in 21-22, #2 priority in 23, and #1 priority again in 2024. And how that has been, how staff have worked through that priority is creating internal working groups and thinking about how can we bring units into the City of Kenmore. And this parcel is one of the opportunities that we saw. We saw an opportunity to transform the city-owned property into affordable mixed-use space, creating some really highly needed housing for Kenmore residents and in the region. We had a vision for both rental and home ownership units. And we're really pleased to see a proposal come through that we'll talk about a bit more. That's going to provide some really unique opportunities for affordable housing in this region. Next slide, please. So the parcel is just, like I said, a few doors down behind Safeway, the lot beside People Storage. This is a vacant lot. The city purchased this in 2022. And it was really kind of this beautiful coincidence that as the city was having this vision around affordable housing, this really key lot within the city town center became available for purchase. And so the city did purchase it with the intent of bringing housing into the downtown core here in Kenmore. Next slide, please. And so a little bit about the timeline, about, again, how we got here. So knowing that this was the vision, the priority set by the Kenmore City Council, and having this internal working group looking at available space within the city limits where housing might be viable. In August of 2023, we released a request for proposals to asking developers and asking nonprofits to dream about what they could possibly do with that space to bring affordable housing into the city limits. In December of 2023, the City Council approved the selection of the proposal submitted by Imagine Housing, which they will talk a bit about later. And then we've been spending the last year plus since then, talking about the scale and scope of the development, adjusting some of the ideas to become a code-compliant project, which was important to council, and working together collaboratively across all the partners to come up with a letter of intent that really spelled out some of the details of what you might see. A proposal starts really as a dream, and then you have to get into the nuts and bolts. And so we're getting one step closer with every council action to really solidify what this proposal might look like in reality in a few years. So the letter of intent has been signed by all the parties, and the pre-application process, which is the permitting process that every development goes through, has also been initiated. And next slide, please. And now we're into the community outreach and communication process to ensure that the community is really aware of what we're thinking about with this space. We can answer any questions that you all might have, explain our vision, and that will culminate in a purchase and sale agreement before the City Council in March is the intent to officially, if approved, sell the land to Imagine Housing to move forward with this proposed development. And I'll let you talk about what goes on from there.
Well, to start, kind of, who are we? Who is Imagine Housing? As an organization, we were actually founded in Bellevue by St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. It was kind of a group of the congregation who saw a need for affordable housing for working families. They started this in 1987 because they couldn't find affordable housing for that working family in Bellevue, and the problem has only grown worse. We really got started with a 14-unit development in 92, and we've kind of grown since. So a little bit about kind of like how has that growth looked like? We're now at 15 communities with 639 permanently affordable apartments. This really translates to roughly about 1,300 people living in our buildings and calling a place home. And you can see here that it's a wide range. We serve anyone and everyone who has needs, whether that be seniors, children, veterans, people living with disabilities, someone exiting homelessness. It's really about trying to make sure that we're serving the entire spectrum of housing. What's not on this slide is if you're going to drive down 522 today, you will see our 16th community in development called Sama Senior, which we're really excited about to be a bigger part of this community. And our partners here at Habitat for Humanity, I'll let them introduce themselves.
Since about 1986, our affiliate has been serving over 2,600 families in the geographies that you see on the slide across King and Kittitas counties through new construction projects of varied types, single family, townhome, cottage, even condominium buildings, 58 units on MLK with XL Pacific as a general contractor. We also have preservation effort, which allows us to perform repairs through our incredible repair team on existing homes so that we can preserve the structures, the home ownership, and the community by allowing them to stay in those homes. Our new construction projects offer a path to home ownership for folks where income is the only obstacle. These are folks that typically are under the median income of 80%, and we try to cap the mortgages at 35% of their monthly income. They're financially qualified in every other way. So these are hardworking nurses, teachers, PSE technicians, and we give them that path to affordable home ownership. Slide, please. Again, these are really financially qualified folks, and we give them that unique path to be able to get to affordable home ownership and get to that stability that it brings in our very expensive marketplace. They partner with us and they get a chance to volunteer on their projects sometimes, swinging hammers, building their own homes. They also volunteer in our stores. They can volunteer in a variety of ways. They can partner with us to help get our story out and represent us at different locations and in different ways. They volunteer, or sorry, they go through the learning experience and that volunteer experience with their future neighbors. So they begin building community far before they actually move into their homes. In fact, on our recent homeowner survey, some of them told us that those relationships last for many years, even after folks move out of those communities, because they really kind of came together for a period of time before they even moved in. That's it. Next slide.
So I kind of alluded to earlier about what the need of affordable housing is. And just to kind of, once again, kind of like level set and talk about where we are today. The need for affordable housing has gotten greater now more than ever. So of the households here living in Kenmore, those who are making between $52,000 to $139,000 annually, 58% of them are rent burdened. So that means they're paying up to 50% or more of their income towards rent today. The annual household income to afford a one bedroom, so by yourself, you need to make $90,000 a year today to be able to afford that one bedroom, to be able to afford the rent, the security deposit, to meet kind of income qualifications. We kind of alluded a lot to AMI, and I am sorry because we work in this space, but what that really means is the area median income. So this is a national number that's kind of looked at King County level. So when we talk about 50% of the area median income for a household of three, so this could be two parents and a child, a single parent, two kids, just three people together, 50% is at $67,800. And then 60% you can see on the slide is 81,360. So this is really, and Troy will get into this later about who we're trying to serve with the apartments. It's like I said in the beginning, Imagine Housing Histories around working families. And you saw earlier that you need $90,000 to be able to afford a one bedroom. So for this family of three, they could not even afford a one bedroom. And this is what we're trying to address here. So you can see that for us, our max rents between the different AMI set-asides are either $1,900 or $2,300. And we put some occupational data there, like who, to put a face to this, who are these people we're talking about? It could be a single parent working within the healthcare support industry. It could be two adults working in retail or food services. This is really meant for, like I said, that working family. And I'll let Habitat talk a bit about kind of their model because they serve a little bit different for the ownership perspective.
Yeah, you can see the bandwidth that we intend to serve with the three-person households, the 70% to 80% area median income. I believe, just not looking over my shoulder and cheating, that it's low 200,000s for mortgage to about mid 300s. And that is sort of the band that we're trying to serve for that 70% to 80% area median income in this project.
So I'm going to actually let Troy here, our development director, talk a bit about the location and the design and where we are today.
So as our friends at the city mentioned before, it's literally just down the street from us, probably not even 2 blocks. It's about 0.8 acres. So it's right here in the core of the downtown area. What I will start with is when the city came out with their request for proposal, it was very ambitious. They were really looking for a wide range of product to be put in a very small area. Typically the products you don't always mix, the home ownership and the rental housing, but we like the idea and our friends at Habitat like the idea. So we're like, yeah, we're gonna do this. So as you look at here, this would be from the ground floor level. You can see that, and it'll be a little more apparent in the next slide, but towards the bottom left of the visual here is where the Habitat for Humanity building is, and that's going to be 18 units of for sale housing that's affordable. And then you can see generally what the lobby layout for the rental building will be. That'll be approximately 100 units. And then it wraps over some of this parking that's directly under the building. This slide here also shows, again, a little bit more detail about how the units are configured within the buildings. We're looking to serve a wide range of family sizes. So the rental building is going to feature studios all the way to 3-bedroom units. Imagine Housing has a big focus on serving families that are a little bit larger. So sometimes it's harder for those families to find affordable units for larger families of maybe up to 5 people. So we focused our design in the rental part of the building to be more heavily weighted towards 2- and 3-bedroom units so that we can serve those families, since those are sometimes a rarity in the market. And then you have some level of kind of repetition of that idea in the for sale housing, where there's a variety of unit types, so that there's a full range of family household sizes that you can serve with that. One of the other things that we really like to focus on is what the community experience is for our residents. So we really try not to cut corners. We want to make sure that our residents, even though they're getting affordable housing, have a chance to experience all the amenities that you might anywhere else in a normal market rate type environment. So we pay a lot of attention to community spaces. We have a rooftop deck that the residents will have on the top floor, have access to. And we've also taken put the community room on the second floor, where it opens out to a smaller rooftop deck, which is just above a single-story kind of lobby area. So we could really expand the areas where kids can have space to play and people can get together for barbecues or whatnot. And if they want a little bit different experience, and then they can go up and see the great views from the rooftop terrace deck. And then, of course, we're very sensitive towards making sure that our residents have parking. I mean, it's very easy in a downtown environment to reduce parking, especially if you're near transit lines. But any chance that we get, we really try to make sure that we provide parking, even if we're allowed to not provide as much. So that was also a big focus for us, is try to make sure that there's as much parking as is reasonable that we can provide without going too far overboard. But of course, not shorting anybody on parking opportunities. And then this picture is a great rendering from our architects at SMR, who are actually in the audience. We've got Kate and John from SMR, who've done this fantastic design. On the left side, bottom left side, is the Habitat for Humanity building for the for sale product. And then, as you can see, the building off to the right is the rental building that it wraps around in kind of a open shaped L to a degree. We also, as we looked at what we wanted to do here with the city as our partners, we also wanted to kind of pay homage to the rich history that Kenmore has, especially with seaplanes. So we found a lot of inspiration in that, both from some of the design elements, but just even in the name, because when we came out to do our property tour with everybody, we had about 5 seaplanes fly over us. So we thought that was probably a big enough signal to say, yeah, we need to give a nod to that. So we've been very deliberate about trying to make sure that we capitalize on that idea as much as possible. So, and then kind of the development timeline. I know that Tammy and Debbie have kind of touched on, what the city process is, but from the development process, we are working with the city and are on track to, come to mutual terms for a purchase and sale agreement, which then sets us up to start going in for funding. is probably the biggest challenge of anything that we do, especially different from your traditional market rate developers, because it has specific timing. And if you don't hit the timing right, then you have to wait in the queue for the next opportunity. And it usually happens, submittals are usually around September, and then you start getting notifications at the end of the year, then you get your final piece at the beginning of the next year, and then you're off to the races. So if any of those pieces don't fall into place, you get to get back in line again and try it all again. So we've tried to make sure that we had enough time to hit a couple funding rounds, because sometimes it takes more than one. And then that would really kind of put us in a position for all the funding to be in place, and then move towards closing all the financing and permitting and all of that in 2028. We anticipate it's going to be probably somewhere between 20 to 24 months, in that range on the construction timing. So basically by the end of 2030, or maybe going early into 2031 is when we would expect to have the project complete and open the doors. And then just a couple of details. I know we've touched on some of this. Depending on how the final layout happens, we're looking at around 100 to 139. I think our last count was about 120-ish. So it really depends on 126. Do I have it right yet? Okay, thank you. See? So obviously we have about 100 units. We're looking at 100 to 102, as many as we can get in there, and stay within code. That was also another important thing. We had looked at it one way, and then it just felt a little bit too much for the site. So we landed at a good spot there. And then obviously 18 units of the permanently affordable for sale housing that our friends here at Habitat are doing. And then we'll also have a small commercial space for a community partner. We originally hoped to be with HopeLink, and you adapt as you go along the process, but we will bring along a great partner that will serve not only the residents of the new community, but the community as a whole. So that was kind of the third piece of the RFP that the city really was looking for. And those are, again, putting the first two components together is challenging, but adding the third one was kind of like, next level. So, we're getting there, and at the end of the day, it's going to be exactly what the city asked for.
So a bit about operations. One of the things with affordable housing, we don't really operate all that differently from a for rent or like a private market apartment building. We collect rent. We use rent to pay our utility bills. We have to pay many of the same bills that a private market apartment will. So we at Imagine Housing, we use a third-party property management company called Indigo, who manages our entire portfolio. So Indigo manages kind of the entire life cycle of a unit, from leasing applications to current occupancy to when someone chooses to move out. And from the beginning, the lease up, it is going through income verifications, background checks. They have to meet anyone who wishes to live here has to meet certain minimum background check requirements. Fair housing laws does say that we have to lease on a first come, first serve basis. So it is the first come, first serve of an eligible potential tenant. So once again, meeting background check requirements, meeting income guideline requirements. I believe right now the income guideline is that you have to make 2x of the monthly rent, but you still have to be below the maximum of kind of what we were saying about earlier, about that 50% of the area median income. And selection and application process for the affordable home ownership is going to be managed by Habitat for Humanity, and they have a pretty robust process.
Yeah, we do a pretty robust selection process. They have to qualify financially. They have to have clean credit, all the usual requirements for applying for and securing a mortgage. And then they go through a pretty robust training program where they learn all the steps to closing on a home, and then how to be a homeowner, maintenance, responsibilities, and a variety of other topics. So they are well engaged in a 6 to 9 month period with Habitat as they go through selection and they go through the partnership program.
So this is the fun portion, it's the Q and A. Are we doing this up here or are we going to do it at the tables? Podium. So Q and A. We do have a limited amount of time because we have some more information back here that will be all available to answer any other questions. The ones that are not, that we can't answer up here will be collected. There's a FAQ on our website at imaginehousing.org/the-approach. And any questions that we can't answer live today, we will put it down on there to be answered. So who would like to go up to the podium?
And just operationally, so because we are live streaming this event and recording, we do need folks to come up to the podium and speak into the microphone so that folks online can hear. We're also monitoring questions and comments that come in through the live stream and Zoom meeting that's currently going, and I don't have any online questions at this time. So if anyone would like to come up to the podium and be the first.
Good evening. My name's Sydney Charlie Boyce. I'm glad. I was worried that the apartments were going to be mixed in with the houses. So I'm glad there's a separation. I didn't know how a homeowners was going to run in an apartment, and who would Indigo be their homeowners, and they would never really have a true homeowners. So I'm really glad to see that separated out. And Troy, you skimmed over the parking. You did it really nice, but you didn't give us any numbers. First of all, how many houses are there?
There are 18.
And how many are 3 bedrooms?
I actually don't know that off the top of my head right now.
Okay, well, I think preferably in America it would be nice if every homeowner had 2 places to park. I know that's not a reality anymore, but certainly if you have a 3-bedroom, people should have 2 parking spots. So total, I think, is there only 37 parking spots total? Or how many apartments, and then how many?
There's a total of 121-ish, right around there, 126.
Apartments?
Total parking spaces,
There's how many parking spaces?
126.
I thought I saw 37. Where did I get that? You have 126 parking spots?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'm not.
We
so
have
worried
2
anymore.
parking levels. So in the very first slide that I showed, that's basically the ground floor courtyard. And there's parking at the back of the building as you wrap underneath the building, and then it goes to the down ramp to the underground parking, which is probably 80-ish to 90 spaces in that lower level,
We're
along with
at
that. Now, maybe
37.
in that upper level is maybe what you saw. If you
Okay.
add the 2, they would come close to
Oh,
120.
I wish I
So,
would have known about the second one.
yeah,
Okay.
we were trying very hard to get to a 1-to-1 ratio. In this kind of setting, it can be challenging just because it's, space confined by the size of the parcel. Other times it's not as hard because you have more space to work with. But again, it's a prerogative that Imagine Housing is very strong, feels strong about, because the code actually would allow us to go below that, I believe, even though the market rate would require more, but it's affordable. So we have some allowances for that.
But that's where I got the 37. Ardea is 37 for 170 tenants, right? That's where
I
I got.
don't have those numbers on that one because we have a different partner on that one. So I'd have to
And
get back to you
Athene
on that.
got 30 for 90 apartments. Okay. But I'm glad. Thank you.
Mhm.
I was going to bring up the parking because it is kind of a problem at some of your properties. And then, also wanted to point out, Velocity doesn't have access to their roof most of the time. So talking about the beautiful roof, it's going to be locked up most of the time. The tenants don't have access to it. They don't, so it would be nice if they do, but it's always locked up and not made available to them. And the courtyard, there's something about sunlight. I know people in Kirkland and regular apartments get upset and they say, no, I will never get sun in my apartment. And sunshine is very important. So are those people in the middle quarter always going to see daylight but never have any sun?
That is an excellent question. And if you ask the design team, one of the very first things that we sat down with them about was providing as much natural light in every possibility that we can, because I mean, maybe we could have squeezed more units on the site and made it a very tight configuration where you don't have the sunlight that comes in, but part of the separation of the buildings is to allow additional light to come in at different angles. And then also having the building, at one point, the building was an entirely different location on the site, and we redesigned it to open up for more natural light to come in. So that was a very deliberate decision on our part. Maybe not as efficient from a building perspective, but we spent a lot of time on what opportunities do we have, which is also another reason why we did that kind of the second floor rooftop patio as well, so that there was additional opportunities to utilize the courtyard, not just to have it filled by building space. Because those spaces can get very dark in large buildings. The higher you go and the tighter you go, the less you're going to have that interior light. And we're like, no, we need a break in the buildings to make sure we have multiple angles for light and opportunities to that. So
Yeah, when you're at Velocity, it's just a dark alleyway kind of there.
yeah, different. Yeah, it's a kind of a different scenario here, but we tried to look at situations
That's
like
good.
that and say, hey, what can we do differently? And we feel like this is a really great solution for that.
And I'm glad you haven't given away a community space. I think in the end, it's going to have to be parks. I hope it is. I hope you have a park employee down there, I think. But are you going to have parking for the people that come in and use that space? Was that designed too? You're going to
For
have
the
a
community space, yeah, some of the parking spaces are out. I believe it's maybe 10 of the spaces, based on code, are provided for that use. So you're really kind of at that, once you take those 10 or so out, you're very, very close to a 1-to-1 ratio on unit count, both from the for sale as well as the rental.
And how many for staff?
About 4 to 5, I think, is what we're targeting right now. We're trying to figure out the exact placement as we develop the design for some of the equipment rooms and all of that. So there's going to be some movement, and there may be additional opportunities to squeeze in some more parking. I mean, I've made it a very direct point with everybody on the team. It's like anywhere we can find the appropriate space to even one more space here and there is important to us. So.
Yeah, because what we've seen at some of the buildings with only 1/3 of the parking needed is there's none for staff, or there's one, but 4 staff come in every day and tow and take over spots. That's not enforced. And Indigo needs to understand, not everybody gets to drive to work before they come, or those staff shouldn't get they're shocked and they just don't give out parking attendance. So I would just hope you have more parking here. That's great. But in some of the apartments where you've gone really, really low, then staff come in and they take 5 or 6 in tow. So they reduce it against the permit. Okay, otherwise you answer some questions. I'm a little bit more happy about this. So thank you.
I do have an online question now, as other folks maybe queue up. The question we've received online is, what was the cost of the land and how much will the entire project cost? So in terms of the purchase price of the land, the city has set the purchase price at $1.5 million. The property was purchased for $3.2 million. So there is an allowed reduction based on it being used for affordable housing, but the purchase price is 1.5 million.
So from a total project perspective, we're probably in the range of right around $90 million. It's fairly expensive to develop in this market. So we are working every day on being as cost efficient as possible on it. So any chance we get to reduce costs, we're taking advantage of. And ultimately, that'll be kind of pushed by what the construction market delivers for us when we go to final bid.
Hi, my name is Katrina, and I'm here as a Kenmore resident, and then I also work as a school nurse in the North Shore School District. So I'm coming from the lens primarily of a school nurse, and I help families a lot, helping 2 refugee families right now get housing. So this is really near and dear to my heart. One question, it looked like on the picture, I've been worried about the mobile home park that's is that safe? Do we know for sure that's not going to be touched?
The mobile home park is not part of this project. It's an adjoining property owner, so.
So we're
um,
guaranteed that's safe and it's not going to be touched?
It's not impacted by this project at all.
Okay.
Currently, the zoning, it is manufactured home community zoning, so that it's an allowed use. And so this project is a separate project to
Lovely.
those mobile home communities.
Wonderful. And then, did you mentioned on one of the slides, the pricing of 35% above the income? Can you just speak to that? It just came up really quickly, or maybe I can go through the points again. And then there was 30 something about that. And then there was also something about disability, something about a discount for disability. It was maybe on the slides before. There's something about disability. I was curious about that. Maybe before. And if you want to answer the questions, there was something, so 204 people living with disabilities, but then I thought there was also, I had written down, so was that just a fact of the disabilities or?
This is the kind of breakup of Imagine Housing's residents and kind of the demographic of who we serve.
Okay, so there's no discount for someone with a disability?
No, so, yeah, no.
Okay. And then what is the approximate rent of a two-bedroom, and is there a discount for low-income families? Like, there's a discount to ownership, but is there also a discount in rent?
So, the way the rent is set is that it is, I wonder if that's what the 35%, it is a percentage of the area median income. So for a two-bedroom, if it's a smaller household, it could be two people, it could be three people. It's set as to what is the King County area median income. So.
King
studio-
County median, that doesn't seem correct for low income to me. I mean, when I think of low income, I think of really low income, I guess. A lot of my families that I'm working with. So maybe this wouldn't be the best option for them then?
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, a two-bedroom, 50% unit right now. For Troy.
So so just a question, I guess, is will the rents be standard to what's other people rent in apartments here, or are they going to be lower?
No, they'll be much lower.
It's lower than market.
Okay,
So I think on one of the slides, the three-bedroom is 1959 for someone at 50% of the area median income. So what this means is that this family of three cannot make more than $67,000 a year. And if they can afford the rent, this would be a potential opportunity for them to live. 50% bedroom, two-bedroom still means for three people, they can't make more than 67,000, but the two-bedroom rent's slightly lower than the three-bedroom rent.
yeah, and the people I'm speaking of income is significantly lower than that, but, okay.
Well, the income calculations are based on family size. So if you have a larger family,
Mhm.
you're allowed to
Right.
earn more to cover the
Right.
expenses for your family, but you also get the benefit of
Right.
qualifying for the rent restricted unit at your level. So in theory, you could, if you had a smaller unit, but had a slightly larger family, maybe it's
Right.
three or four, and
Yeah.
it's in a two-bedroom, in theory, it would be easier for somebody. They would still qualify because the family size would allow them a higher
Yeah.
income limit, but then they could also live in a two-bedroom, which means they would actually pay less percentage
Yeah.
of their income.
Yep.
Usually they want to be able to afford, 30-ish% of your income, no more than that towards your housing.
Mhm.
We start seeing significantly income burden families having to pay more than 50%
Mhm.
of their income. So we really try to make sure that their income qualified, they don't get into that rent
Yeah.
burden, spending over half their money
Mhm.
for that. So there are some flexibilities in the program.
Yeah.
I think the other advantage is if you were to compare Bellevue, the AMI for Bellevue is much higher.
Mhm.
So the King County standard itself is actually lower, which actually means the threshold is easier for folks who are lower income to get into these units based on the King County standard. I mean, it's the standard for the whole county, but the reality of it is based on what part of town you're in,
Mhm.
the income level might be higher. So there is some advantage by having it generically associated, and that's how the funding program actually operates
Okay.
is for King County.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
My name is Patty Gwynn. I'm a Kenmore resident, and I work in a business that's very close down here downtown. There is a really big parking problem in Kenmore. So whatever you can do to make as many parking spaces for that place would be awesome. I'm kind of confused with the numbers you came up with because there is a 97-page pamphlet in the Kenmore government site, which I know you guys probably aren't responsible for, that was saying that this building was going to have 152 units. And you're saying it's going to have 102?
So I think the document you're referring to was a request for proposal document.
Okay.
So that was an early document when we were soliciting proposals. So as you go from an idea for a proposal, we get a submittal, and now they have been slowly working through the process in terms of what is the size and scope of project. So it's being refined.
Okay.
So that is not a concrete number.
Okay,
So
cool.
as Troy said, we're about 120-something units right now, but there's still some flexibility around that as they start moving through the permit process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you were saying there were going to be 102 units, and I'm assuming that's not including the 18 Habitat for Humanity units, so there'll be a total of about 120 units? Okay. Okay, another question for you is there going to be any space, green space, for the children that are going to live here to have? Because there's stuff here in Kenmore, the splash park and all sorts of stuff, but there really isn't any green space for children, and this is going to be a lot of children. Is there going to be any place where they get, I mean, the rooftop's great, the community space is great, but kids kind of need green space? Is that being factored in somewhere?
Well, the rooftop, we actually added the second floor rooftop deck for that very reason, to make it more kid-friendly, and it also opens, the community room opens directly off of it, so you can have indoor, outdoor events. You're in an urban downtown core environment, so, I mean, if we had a bigger parcel, we absolutely would find a way to maybe create a small grassy park space. We deal with that differently in a more compact setting where we're going to dedicate a fair amount of that space on that second deck to be kid-friendly and family-friendly, and then the upper deck would be more of probably adult-friendly, if you will, just to give different experiences throughout the building. But yeah, I mean, you're in a downtown core. I mean, we tried to make sure that the courtyard in and of itself was actually not too compact. You could have wrapped the building around and make it U-shaped, but it would be very dark, and the courtyard would be very small, and then you don't have a lot of spaces for your residents. So that was kind of our approach to try to kill two birds with one stone, if you will.
Okay, and it looks like, according to this drawing, there's one entrance in and out of this, correct? So there'll be, all the traffic will be coming out between the public storage building and that side.
There's maybe, are we two garage entrances? One garage entrance on the side next to public storage.
Okay.
But as far as it goes into the buildings, there's multiple entrances into the ground floor of the building, plus separate entrances, obviously, with the separate building for the Habitat part too.
Well, we're just curious because those of us that shop at Safeway, and there's a lot of people that use that road as a cut-through road to avoid traffic, it's going to get really interesting. So I hope there's going to be some things built in for the safety of the children and the people who are trying to get around, because that's a pretty busy corridor. So, but thank you for your
Yeah,
presentation.
you bet.
Hi, my first question, I live at a theme, in Imagine Housing.
Sorry, would
property.
you kindly scooch over and speak into the microphone?
Oh,
so
I'm
our
sorry. Is
Online
that
guests can
better?
hear. That's
Oh,
much better.
okay.
Thank you.
My first question was, do the officiators of this meeting have, follow-up contact information that if questions come up later, we can get names and email addresses or a way to follow up later?
Yes, absolutely. I think both the city and Imagine have website pages for this specific project, and happy to hand out business cards at the end, and everything will be posted
That's what I
online.
was looking for,
Absolutely.
business cards.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, okay, when I saw the plans and the layout there, kind of tall, I guess. It looks like there's no decks or anything. And the windows look like similar windows to what they have at Athene. And I've lived there 7 years. And I can tell you it's a sauna. We are facing severe climate change, weather events. I can't tell you what it was like living in my apartment when it got up to 108 degrees a few years ago. There's no ventilation, so I'm wondering if you're going to install better HVAC with air conditioning for all these families.
So, excellent question. We're actually working on multiple projects right now, and this topic came up. And one of the things that we're giving consideration to is portable AC ports. So basically, we'd set it up. I know that a traditional AC, window AC hangs out the window, and that's very unsafe and whatnot. But there are ways that we can actually put a port in the building under one of the windows where you can plug the exhaust hose into, and that way anybody who wants to have their own AC unit. AC isn't something that you see in a lot of buildings in general, but we also understand that things like ceiling fans and access to easy ways to plug in an exhaust hose so you can have your own AC if you choose to do so, or other ways to provide those opportunities. So we're looking at opportunities like that to see how that might work out.
Well, when the windows only fan out a couple inches, it's really hard to set up a portable AC like is the case in my one bedroom.
Yeah, which is another reason why, it wouldn't be really compatible with the hanging ones, the big boxy ACs. So again, the other way is to just already build a port into the building where you open the port and just plug in the hose and then it just exhausts out. So we'll be looking at things like that. We're still a little early in the process for what our equipment will look like within the building. So it's something that we can absolutely take a look at to see what the best way to deal with that is.
So it's not in the plans yet, the AC?
Yeah, it's not, well, like I said, we haven't fully spec'd out all the units yet. So we're looking at what the HVAC units might look like for that. And
Because I can tell you it's been really, really tough during
Mhm.
the hot weather to be in these enclosed
Yeah.
buildings with no deck and windows that only go out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that you're.
Yep, yeah, we're absolutely, I was literally in a meeting just the other day that we started talking about that idea, and maybe that's a standard that we adopt, so that if you choose to go purchase a portable, I have a portable in my house, and,
They're a pain in the butt.
they can be, yeah, but they're certainly better than those big boxy ones that you hang out that might fall out on
Right,
somebody,
and
so.
that's not even a consideration in my
Yeah.
lease,
Yeah,
so.
so
yeah.
I would just
Okay.
say right now, we're still very early. I mean, we kind of talked about that funding and everything. We're looking at the next 2 years, and part of that's going to be looking at what the materials, like where it is specific pieces of like each unit, what goes in, like none of that has necessarily been, I wouldn't even say.
Yeah, I think it should be mandatory more often as weather gets warmer, as it's going to get warmer. In California, new construction, it's required to have every unit with AC. And so you have heat, I think AC is going to be a necessary thing, especially with no outside access like a deck or something like that, so.
No, I agree. I'm just,
Okay.
it is
Thank
hot.
you.
Hi, it's Cindy again. She brought up some good points. So I think Francis Village got ceiling fans. But when Athene went in, it's wired for it. You can see the cap on the ceiling, but the seniors never got ceiling fans. They also didn't get guards over their sprinkler systems, so you have a lot of floods. They get set off. So is there any way a Theed could get some kind of budget back so they could get ceiling fans?
So I think we're going to try to keep this to about the approach and not kind of other buildings. I mean, we can have that
Okay.
conversation.
Well, if you have to cut the budget back, is that what's going to go, is ceiling fans? Is that what happened at a Theed? You're
I
saying
wasn't here when. yeah,
ideal,
I-
and then
I-
we'll start cutting back.
So
Okay, well, just remember some
Yeah,
of your other
You know,
properties
I-
really need ceiling fans.
So we don't currently have any online questions, but I would just want folks who are in the virtual world to know we aren't able to live stream in your voice. So if you do have a question, please put it in the chat versus raising a hand or anything. I can't see any of that. So I just want to ensure that anyone who's online in the virtual world knows that I can see typed questions and I'm happy to read them out and we'll get your question answered. But I'm not able to see if you're trying to maneuver any other way to draw my attention on the Zoom screen. Go ahead.
Sorry, howdy, my name is Jacob. So a couple really good points I think were brought up here. One of the big ones is parking. I saw one of the things that was mentioned on the side of the Imagine Housing proposal for this idea. First off, that it was brought down the number to like 1.2 ratio of apartment units to the number of parking spaces available. And although I think that's a good approach to the problem, I think that this road out here in particular is pretty congested most of the time. And I was wondering whether there was any plans. I saw it was listed between 100 and 135 parking spots on your presentation. Now, how set are you on trying to be over that one-to-one ratio of parking to housing?
Any chance we get, we're going to look to squeeze more parking spaces in there. The earlier comment about our original proposal, which actually had more units, had less parking. And
Yeah.
we immediately realized that not only was it a little challenging to find a way to fit into the code as written, but there was a practical challenge there that, as we said earlier, we want to make sure that parking is as readily available as we can make it. And every chance that we get, we're going to do that. I mean, some projects, when you're lucky enough to have surface parking, it's wonderful. You can park all kinds of, but that's not the reality anymore. You don't see a lot of opportunities. And like I said, this is a very compact space. This is, for this many units, it's a fairly small parcel. And parking's very expensive. I mean, the reality of it is it's probably, for every underground space that we provide, each of those spaces is probably somewhere in the range of $100,000 in cost because of all the concrete infrastructure that has to be dealt with. We're also on a site where the water table is fairly high, which also makes it challenging. It's not just as simple as digging straight down and, going, 3 levels, which, is great. And I think you might even experience that when you go to downtown Seattle, where they just go and they go and they go. But that's not really the case here. You're dealing with a fairly high water table, so you have to be careful of that because then you might flood the parking lot. So we've thought that was really the best solution to keep it above the minimum required because it's affordable, but still make it fit that's appropriate for the size of the parcel.
Sorry, but what is the minimum requirement of parking spaces, the ratio between living units and parking spaces for affordable housing units?
There is a discounted amount, I believe. If Sam, do you want to?
Let me look it up and get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can post that information on the.
I just
Thank
am
you.
concerned because it sounded like it wasn't like you were as determined to hit that 1-to-1 ratio as much. So I wanted to make sure that that was a high priority, especially as you see the congested downtown streets of Kenmore here are, it's pretty difficult to maneuver around here. Another concern I had was originally this building was planned to be a 6-story and a 7-story building. And that proposal to meet with the Kenmore building codes was reduced from a 7-story for the affordable housing option down to the 6-story. That 7-story originally was going to be market rate apartments and not affordable housing apartments. Was I misreading that, or is all
Yeah,
of
there
the
was
units-
never any, we're actually in a very tight band of the 50 to 60% income range, and there's not there's never been any proposal from our team that proposed any market rate combination. I mean, sometimes you see that, but it's not very common right now, but it's certainly not part of our proposal.
In the upper terrace area, there was a mention that it would be available to the top 6th floor inhabitants. Is that going to be available to all members of the community, or is
Yes,
it just?
yeah, it's a
Okay.
community amenity for everybody who wants to access it.
Right. And there was one more thing with the affordable, you said right now for around a 3-bedroom, it is looking at around a 1956 it was, income that you'd have to, or a rent payment for a 3-bedroom. Yeah. I feel like that isn't a very, I feel like that's a pretty high metric to hold, especially in this community, which is not inside of the King County. I know there was a lot of argument made that that would be actually beneficial because they can make a lower amount to be able to meet those rent payments and be able to get into these affordable housing units. But I don't feel like it really meets the end goal of being able to supply for people that are truly low income in the area.
So, like I said, the area median income is calculated, it's actually calculated by HUD at a federal level of kind of what is the King County metro area here. A lot of the funding is actually tied to those numbers. So that's when you hear us use 50, 60s, 80, like, because that's a lot of how these developments are funded. The rent in there is like, that's the max rent plus utilities. So that includes a certain amount of utility allowance. The actual what people will pay also is partly dictated by market. You know, what we put in the slide, what we put in the information is kind of the upper bands of what is allowable. And then when we go and open and we lease up like a private market apartment. There are places where we have to give concessions sometimes. So there is going to be some wiggle room in terms of what that rent will look like. So yeah, that number will move.
Yeah, the other part I would add is we always do a market study. It's always required by our funders to kind of validate our assumptions and then compare that to what the rent standards are that are established. And on occasion, you may get a market study that looks specifically at this area. It says, well, it's great that you have a $2,000 affordable rent standard, but the market won't bear that. And we do combine public funding programs along with regular commercially available, just like any other developer does. But they're only going to lend on the feasibility established by the market study. So if the market study says, no, the rent limit for your type of unit is really $1,800, guess what? Rents are going to go down to $1,800, and then we have to see that if the project works at that level. That's, you know, so I know we've talked about King County, but it'll also be validated for this specific zip code where the project's actually going. And usually those, you know, many times what you'll find is that the market study will tell you, oh, you could actually charge more, but then you're capped by the lowest, which would be the income restriction. So.
We're going to try to get some online questions real quick since we're coming close to the end of our time. Like I said, we're going to be around for another hour. We're all going to, there's tables set up back there. So if there's more conversation or questions.
Thank you. Yes, we have a number of questions that have come in the last few minutes online. So I want to get to a few of them, and any that are not answered here live, we will be posting all of these with written answers to the websites shortly. So one question is around parking, which is parking provided to each unit at no cost? So,
I'm shaking my head, but yes, I just realized I can't see that.
yeah, okay, thank you. And then the next comment / question is the walkthrough from the manufactured park looks blocked off. Can you speak to the mid-block connection?
So we are working on a connection of the adjacent property so we can connect down to the street. That's a footpath right now. So I believe our solution is to have a sidewalk along the edge of the property that the neighboring property can access. It won't likely go through the middle of the property, but it'll just go slightly around the back and along the property line. So there will still be connectivity.
And then I'm just going to do the last two because I think one's quick and one is just a comment to read. The question is, can you provide the AMI chart as well as the 1 and 2 bedroom highest income and expected rent? And I'd say we would provide that online,
Yes,
right? Well,
we can post it
written
on the FAQs.
perfect. And then the kind of the second part of that before the comment is, do you consider any of the home ownership units below 60% AMI? And is that current AMI like locked in?
As of right now, the plans are 65% to 80% AMI is the bandwidth of the folks that we're trying to serve.
And I would say now the AMIs, the number changes because we get updated numbers every year for what the area median income is. So the numbers that we are posting and we're showing is kind of just the latest numbers that we have been given. And then in 12 months, we'll have updated numbers. And by the time we get to 2030, they're probably going to look a little different, even more.
And then we have the last thing that was submitted online is a comment, and I'll read it and then we can move into the next part of the presentation. It says, Yizhou is misleading the community by ignoring issues of racism. One of his properties is currently facing a HUD investigation due to allegations of discrimination. Meanwhile, the board of directors claims to represent residents, which is far from the truth. The chairman, a specialist in foreclosures, raises concerns about their motives. This man seems more like a jester propped up by liberal supporters from Bellevue, including one who hasn't even been elected. I plan to reach out to all of you soon, sharing vital information about why Imagine Housing shouldn't be part of your community, especially until there is a change in leadership.
All right.
And that is all of the online comments and questions that we received. And it looks like we don't have anyone up at the podium here as well. So we'll move into
Yeah, real quick, we're going to keep having these convenings. The next one is going to be Tuesday, March 18th between 12 and 2 at the hangar. It'll be in person. And what we have right now is table time. So if you look behind you, there's kind of some different sections here where there will be both Imagine Housing staff, city staff, Habitat for Humanity staff to be able to answer, to be able to have any conversations about anything that has not been brought up at this point. And I believe we're going to run that until 8 o'clock tonight. So thank you very much.
thank you. With that, we'll end the live stream and move into that community conversation. Thank you.